This is what it looks like when a billionaire steals your identity and the government helps him do it. 300 million Americans, their social security numbers, their addresses, their work histories, their medical records, their entire financial lives. All of it copied onto an unsecured cloud server by people who were never vetted, never confirmed by Congress, never even publicly identified. And now we know they signed a secret agreement to share that data with a political group trying to overturn elections. You thought your social security information was protected by federal law. You thought there were safeguards. You were wrong. In this special report, we are going to break down the largest government data breach in American history. We are going to show you exactly how Elon Musk's DOGE team infiltrated the Social Security Administration. We are going to expose the secret agreement they signed with election deniers. And we are going to explain why nobody is being held accountable while your most sensitive information sits on servers that the government itself cannot access. Let me take you back to February 2025. The Trump administration had just taken office. Elon Musk, fresh off spending hundreds of millions to elect the president, was given control of something called the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, a joke name for what would become a very serious threat. DOGE was supposed to find waste, fraud, and abuse, cut government spending, streamline operations. That was the sales pitch. What actually happened was a systematic infiltration of the most sensitive databases in the federal government. The Social Security Administration maintains records on virtually every American who has ever worked legally in this country. Your Social Security number, your earnings history, your disability status, your Medicare information, your banking details for direct deposit. This is the crown jewel of identity theft. This is the data that, in the wrong hands, could be used to open credit cards, file false tax returns, steal benefits, or simply destroy someone's financial life. DOGE wanted access. The Social Security Administration, to its credit, initially resisted. Career officials raised concerns. Lawyers questioned the legal authority. Security teams warned about the risks. A lawsuit was filed in February 2025 by a government employees union. They argued that giving DOGE access violated the Privacy Act. A federal judge in Maryland agreed and issued a temporary restraining order. The order was clear. DOGE was blocked from accessing sensitive, confidential, and personally identifiable information. What happened next should result in criminal prosecutions. According to court filings released last week, DOGE team members ignored the restraining order. They continued accessing data. They copied information onto Cloudflare, a third-party server that is not approved for storing Social Security data. The Social Security Administration did not know this was happening. They discovered it months later during an unrelated review. The people entrusted with protecting your data had no idea that unauthorized personnel were copying it to unsecured systems. But it gets worse. In March 2025, while the restraining order was still in effect, a political advocacy group contacted two members of the DOGE team at Social Security. The group wanted help overturning election results in certain states. One of the DOGE employees signed what the court filing calls a voter data agreement. Let me be clear about what this means. A person with access to the Social Security records of 300 million Americans signed an agreement with election deniers to help them challenge election results. The agreement was signed on March 24, 2025, 4 days after the judge issued the restraining order blocking DOGE access. The Social Security Administration did not know about this agreement. It was never reviewed through official channels. It was never approved by agency lawyers. It was a secret deal between DOGE operatives and political actors, using your data as the currency. The advocacy group wanted to cross-reference Social Security data with state voter rolls. They wanted to find people they could claim were non-citizens voting illegally. They wanted to use your personal information to challenge elections. There is a name for using government databases for partisan political purposes. It is called a Hatch Act violation. It is a federal crime. 2 DOGE employees have been referred for potential Hatch Act violations. But referred is not the same as prosecuted, and so far, there is no indication that anyone will face actual consequences. The Supreme Court made this possible. In June 2025, the Supreme Court reversed the lower court's restraining order. They allowed DOGE to access Social Security data. The justices apparently believed the administration's promises that the data would be properly protected. Those promises were lies. Within weeks of getting Supreme Court approval, DOGE team members were sharing data on unapproved servers, signing secret agreements with political groups, and sending files to Elon Musk's personal associates. One court filing describes an encrypted, password-protected file containing the names and addresses of roughly 1,000 people. This file was sent to Steve Davis, described as one of Musk's top lieutenants, and copied to a DOGE employee at the Department of Labor. The Social Security Administration has been unable to access this file. They do not know exactly what it contains. They do not know if it has been shared further. They do not know if it still exists on servers they cannot control. Your information, in a file, that the government cannot open, sent to a billionaire's associate for purposes unknown. This is not data security. This is data anarchy. Antonio Gracias is a private equity investor and close ally of Elon Musk. Court filings indicate he was working with DOGE inside the Social Security Administration. His stated focus was supposed to be death data and reducing improper payments. Instead, he began pushing claims about non-citizen voting. At a rally in Wisconsin with Musk, Gracias claimed that a sample review of Social Security data matched with voter rolls found non-citizens who had registered and cast ballots. This claim has not been verified. The methodology has not been explained. The data has not been released, but it was used to justify continued access to sensitive databases and to push the narrative that elections are being stolen. This is how the data was supposed to be used all along, not to find waste, not to reduce fraud, to manufacture evidence for election challenges, to create a pretext for voter suppression, to weaponize government databases against American citizens. The whistleblower tried to warn us. In August 2025, Charles Borges, the former chief data officer at the Social Security Administration, went to Congress. He told them that DOGE was storing Americans' data in an unsafe environment. He warned that the security protocols were inadequate. He raised alarms about unauthorized access. The Social Security Administration responded by telling the Washington Post that they were not aware of any compromise to this environment. They said they remained dedicated to protecting sensitive personal data. That statement was false. We know now that at the time they made it, DOGE team members had already copied data to Cloudflare, signed agreements with political groups, and shared files with Musk's associates. Either the agency was lying, or they genuinely did not know what was happening in their own systems. Neither option is reassuring. Congressional Democrats have been demanding action for months. Representative John Larson and Representative Richard Neal, the ranking Democrats on the Social Security Subcommittee and Ways and Means Committee, have called for a full criminal investigation. Their statement last week was extraordinary. DOGE signed an agreement to share Social Security data with an organization trying to undermine state election results, sent 1,000 Americans' personal records directly to one of Elon Musk's top consiglieres, and shared the confidential data of Americans on a private server. The DOGE appointees engaged in this scheme, who were never brought before Congress for approval or even publicly identified, must be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law for these abhorrent violations of the public trust. They called it potentially the largest data breach in our nation's history. They noted it may have implications for election security. Republicans have blocked every effort at oversight. They voted down resolutions demanding documents. They changed House rules to shield DOGE from accountability. They have maintained complete silence while their constituents' data was stolen. The institutional response has been non-existent. Elon Musk refused to appear before Congress. DOGE officially ended operations in November 2025, but the damage was already done. The data that was copied still exists somewhere. The agreements that were signed may still be in effect. The people who violated the law are still walking free. The National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare called it malfeasance, enabled by a culture of recklessly interfering in the legitimate functions of the federal government with questionable intent and zero accountability. That culture was created by Musk. It was enabled by the administration. And it was blessed by a Supreme Court that trusted promises that turned out to be worthless. What can be done with your stolen data? Identity theft is the obvious risk. With a social security number, date of birth, and address, criminals can open credit accounts, file fraudulent tax returns, claim benefits in your name, or simply sell your information on the dark web. But the political uses may be more dangerous. If the data was cross-referenced with voter rolls, it could be used to challenge specific voters at polling places. It could be used to send intimidating letters to people questioning their citizenship. It could be used to create lists of targets for immigration enforcement. The administration has already demanded voter rolls from 22 states. They have already demanded welfare data that could identify vulnerable immigrants. Adding Social Security data to this mix creates a surveillance apparatus that authoritarian regimes would envy, and we have no idea who has access to it now. The files were shared on Cloudflare, a service the government does not control and cannot audit. The encrypted file sent to Musk's associate has never been recovered. The full extent of what was copied and where it went remains unknown. Your data, somewhere out there, in hands unknown, for purposes undisclosed. This is the legacy of DOGE, not efficiency, not savings, not reform. A massive data breach, political corruption, and the complete collapse of data protection at the agency that holds America's most sensitive information. The question now is whether anyone will be held accountable. The Hatch Act referrals have been made, but referrals are not prosecutions. The Office of Special Counsel investigates Hatch Act violations, but their enforcement powers are limited, and in an administration that views the law as optional, there is little reason to expect consequences. Criminal prosecution would require the Justice Department to act against members of its own team. That seems unlikely when the Attorney General is busy demanding voter rolls and defending agents who kill American citizens. Congressional oversight would require Republicans to break with their leadership. That seems unlikely when they have already changed House rules to protect DOGE from scrutiny. Civil litigation continues, but courts move slowly, and the Supreme Court has already shown it will side with the administration on access questions. The realistic outcome is that nothing happens. The data remains compromised, the perpetrators remain free, and the precedent is set that political operatives can infiltrate government databases, steal information on hundreds of millions of Americans, and face no consequences whatsoever. This is not a partisan issue. Republicans have Social Security numbers too. Their data was stolen alongside everyone else's. Their identities are at risk. Their financial information is floating around on servers that Elon Musk's friends control. But somehow tribal loyalty trumps self-interest. Somehow protecting the team matters more than protecting yourself. Somehow owning the libs is worth letting a billionaire own your identity. We are monitoring the court cases. We are monitoring Congress. We are monitoring an administration that has shown it will say anything and do anything to avoid accountability. Your Social Security number is 9 digits. 9 digits that define your financial existence. 9 digits that DOGE copied, shared, and lost track of. 300 million Americans. 9 digits each. All of it compromised, none of it protected, nobody held responsible. This is what efficiency looks like when Elon Musk is in charge. Welcome to the breach.